decades, the name Chuck Norris has carried a kind of myth that very few public figures ever experience, a reputation so powerful that jokes about his strength and toughness became part of global pop culture. Yet behind that towering legend stood a man whose real story was shaped not by invincibility, but by hardship, doubt, and a lifelong search for identity. And as the years passed and the world celebrated him as an unstoppable action hero, there remained quiet moments in his personal life where he reflected on his past, his roots, and the deeper truths that shaped who he became. Truths that, much like a symbolic DNA test, revealed not secrets of scandal, but the emotional and personal blueprint of a man forged by struggle rather than fame. Long before Hollywood lights or martial arts championships, Chuck Norris was born Carlos Ray Norris on March 10, 1940, in a small town in Oklahoma, a place far removed from the glamour he would later know. And his childhood was anything but glamorous, marked by poverty, instability, and a sense of uncertainty that would follow him through his earliest years. His father struggled with alcohol addiction, and the home environment was often tense and unpredictable, forcing his mother to shoulder responsibilities that would test her strength in ways most families never face. And as a young boy, Chuck watched these struggles unfold, absorbing the silent lessons of resilience and endurance long before he understood how deeply they would shape his future. When his parents eventually separated, it left a deep emotional imprint, one that many people later said fueled his relentless drive to prove himself, not just to the world, but to his own sense of worth. And in those early days, there was nothing about Chuck Norris that hinted at future greatness. He was shy, introverted, and often described himself as an average kid who lacked confidence, a far cry from the fearless persona audiences would later cheer on television screens across America. During his teenage years, his family relocated to California, chasing the promise of a better life. Yet, even in a place known for opportunity, Chuck struggled to find direction. School was difficult, friendships were limited, and the weight of insecurity lingered heavily on his shoulders, making him feel invisible in a world that seemed to reward louder personalities and natural talents. But it was during this uncertain period that one of the most important chapters of his life began, when he enlisted in the United States Air Force after graduating from high school, a decision that would ultimately reshape the trajectory of his life in ways he could never have predicted. Stationed in South Korea, Chuck encountered martial arts for the first time, an experience that felt almost like destiny, though at the time it was simply a way to pass the hours and build confidence. Yet, as he immersed himself in training, something inside him shifted. Discipline replaced doubt, structure replaced chaos, and for the first time in his life, he discovered a sense of purpose that felt authentic and deeply personal. Martial arts became more than just a hobby. It became a language through which he could express determination, focus, and self-respect. And each passing day strengthened not only his physical abilities, but his mental resilience, laying the foundation for a future that would eventually redefine his identity. When Chuck returned to the United States after his military service, he carried with him more than training techniques. He carried a new belief in himself, one that pushed him to open martial arts schools and compete professionally. Yet success did not come overnight. There were financial struggles, moments of doubt, and countless sacrifices that tested his endurance. But his persistence paid off as he began winning championships, gaining recognition as one of the most skilled martial artists of his generation. And as his reputation grew, opportunities began to emerge in unexpected places, including Hollywood, where producers and directors were searching for authentic fighters who could bring realism to action films. His first major break came when he was introduced to martial arts legend Bruce Lee, a meeting that would change his career forever. Bruce Lee recognized Chuck's potential and cast him as an opponent in the 1972 film Way of the Dragon, a role that placed Chuck Norris in front of a global audience for the first time. And although he was still new to acting, his presence on screen left a lasting impression. Audiences were captivated by the intensity of the fight scenes, and the world began to see Chuck Norris not just as a martial artist, but as a cinematic force capable of commanding attention. From that moment forward, Hollywood doors opened wider, leading to starring roles in action films that would define the genre throughout the 1980s. Movies like Missing in Action and The Delta Force transformed him into a household name, a symbol of strength, patriotism, and unwavering courage. Yet, even as fame surrounded him, the deeper truth of his identity remained rooted in the struggles of his past, the lessons learned from childhood adversity, and the discipline forged through years of relentless training. And in many ways, this is where the metaphorical DNA test of his life truly revealed itself, not through science, but through reflection, showing that the qualities people admired most in Chuck Norris were not inherited by chance, but built through hardship, perseverance, and an unshakable belief in personal growth. As the years passed and his career expanded into television with the massive success of Walker, Texas Ranger, Chuck Norris became more than just an actor. He became a cultural icon, admired across generations. And while the world celebrated his fictional victories over villains and criminals, his real victories were often quieter, found in moments of family connection, personal faith, and mentorship of young athletes who looked up to him as a role model. And by the time he reached his later years, a new kind of reflection began to take shape, one that focused not on fame or fortune, but on legacy, on understanding the deeper truths that defined his journey, and on recognizing that the real measure of strength is not how many battles one wins on screen, but how many personal challenges one overcomes away from the spotlight. In interviews and personal writings, Chuck often spoke about the importance of family history and the value of understanding one's roots, emphasizing that identity is not simply defined by public achievements, but by the quiet influences of parents, mentors, and experiences that shape character over time. And as modern technology made DNA testing more common across the world, many families began exploring their ancestry, discovering connections that reshaped their understanding of heritage. And although there was no dramatic scandal or shocking revelation in Chuck Norris's case, the symbolic idea of tracing one's origins resonated deeply with him, reinforcing the belief that every person carries within them a story written long before their public achievements begin, a story that explains not just where they come from, but why they fight, why they persist, and why they refuse to give up when circumstances seem impossible. And this deeper realization became one of the most powerful themes in Chuck Norris's later life, inspiring him to share motivational messages that encouraged audiences to embrace their struggles as stepping stones rather than obstacles, reminding audiences that even the strongest individuals are shaped by vulnerability, failure, and perseverance. And as he moved into his 80s, Chuck Norris remained active in philanthropy and community work, focusing on programs designed to help young people develop discipline and confidence through martial arts training, a mission that reflected the very path that transformed his own life decades earlier. And in doing so, he demonstrated that the real truth of his life was not hidden in secret documents or scientific tests, but visible in the countless lives he influenced through mentorship and inspiration, proving that the legacy of a person is not measured by fame alone, but the positive change they create in others. And as the world looked back on his journey after more than 80 decades, it became clear that the legend of Chuck Norris was never just about physical strength or cinematic heroism. It was about resilience, humility, and the courage to face life's uncertainties head-on, qualities that remain far more powerful than any myth or rumor ever could. And in the years ahead, as new generations continue to discover his films, his teachings, and his life story, the deeper truth revealed through reflection, much like the symbolic idea of a DNA test, will continue to remind people that greatness is not something people are born with, but something they build step by step through perseverance, sacrifice, and an unshakable belief in personal growth.